Okay, no one is waiting, but at least now, if they want to see, they can look and hear. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how many will join us and watch the stream. So anything you say now will be used against you. Shut up then. Just shut up then. Lots of things. Yeah. Margarita, and that's just a vegetarian option. So you decide which one you want.
I'll put a note on the door with my number.
Mm.
That works.
Nice.
Otherwise, we'll have to eat all this pizza ourselves.
Mm?
Otherwise, we'll have to eat all this pizza ourselves.
Yeah. No one's going home before this is empty.
Okay.
Staying here all night.
Well, a job is a job, and we must approach it professionally.
Systematically.
So what is people expecting from this meetup today? Nothing?
Nothing in particular. Maybe to learn something new.
Yeah.
Like, oops.
And pizza.
And pizza, yeah, of course.
To see all the fancy Visual Studio Code extensions that will suggest all the services for us. Instead of writing all those strings.
Yeah.
Actually tried that.
Waiting to be misspelled.
There's GitHub Copilot.
Oh yeah.
It speaks Terraform and Bicep, and because it's just trained on whatever is in GitHub. So writing a comment like create a new container instance with name X, it will output Terraform resource with the right properties.
Yeah. I'm a little excited to see how many will use it now that it costs money.
Yeah.
So I think they will lose many of the users, but maybe the developers will keep using it because you can just write.
Because they'll simply bill it to their company they're working
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Kind of like ReSharp or nice names.
I haven't even actually tested it. The Copilot. I'm not sure I like the principle because it kind of trains on all the code in GitHub, also private repositories and everything. And this is the first time, so you can have the like copyright infringements and stuff.
When you were describing, I was also thinking of the example, do the same pipeline as they have in Amazon for this service. Okay, wait a second. Here it is.
So when will we have the first security breaches from Copilot where like a secret or something is suggested? Maybe never, I don't know.
They've written a lot of filters, and they've trained the algorithm to recognize secrets and not push those to clients.
Yeah. I would
Yeah,
also.
it's
But does it actually write that much code?
yes,
So it takes sort of complete sentences,
yes.
structures,
Yeah.
functions.
It's really impressive if you give it, or if you learn how to give it comments.
Yeah.
Like I just made a mock C# class. So I just had an empty CS file, I said slash slash, and then I wrote what I write. Basic C# structure. Outputs the class for me. And create a person class with name and age, and then it correctly makes the string, the name a string and the age I guess.
Yeah, it's like an advanced version of some of the class show today. Because that shows some insert resources, some autocomplete stuff, but it's not that advanced like Copilot is. So it doesn't think for itself, it just kind of gives you a stupid structure with some values. It won't be trained on something.
Yeah, those template extensions.
Yeah.
Grab the whole book. The full pieces.
So I'll just wait about 5 minutes or something, and then we'll start the presentation. Just so that everyone that wants to watch the stream can do it.
Are these always streamed, these sessions?
No. But I try, because not everyone can show up.
Oh.
And also, then I can post a link later and say, if you didn't see it, you can see it here.
Yes, I upload it permanently.
It's automatically uploaded if you stream it.
Okay.
At least the previous one that I streamed is still there. And I downloaded it, so.
But also a great thing about watching it on the streaming YouTube, if you miss something, then you can always kind of go a few seconds back and then simply do times 2 to catch up. For questions at the end.
Right. Of course, it puts a strain on my computer, so it's kind of hard for it to process. Because I'm using
OBS?
Open Broadcasting Studio, the OBS.
Yeah.
Broadcasting the screen and a webcam.
It can't be worse than Teams.
Hmm?
Can't be worse than Teams.
Yeah. It is.
It is.
Well,
Teams is even okay unless you decide to both record and share at the same time. But thankfully we do have 20 cores plus multi-threading workstations.
The desktop, yeah.
Yeah.
The laptop will just crash and burn.
What, are you one of those barbarians who plays it directly on a laptop? I mean, even Teams you need to play from a remote desktop connection.
That's what
It's the Azure Virtual Desktop with NVIDIA GPU machine. Then you can do Teams.
requirement.
I don't know if you're using 4K on that TV because it supports it, so it'll default to it. If you change the resolution 1080, then it's fine.
1080.
Yeah, 1080.
Yeah.
Save some resources.
I set it to 1080 and 30 FPS.
No.
No gaming here, so I don't have 60. There will be no gaming today. I'm just glad someone shut up. If you hadn't, there would be more pizza for me. Too much.
Are you hosting a lot of these meetups?
I try to do like maybe once a month or every other month. internal stuff, and there isn't enough time in the day to kind of do everything, so I just have to adjust. But this is all kind of free time work, so it's evening work and just interest really.
But I guess it benefits because as well to have you as an advocate.
Well, I guess.
I feel like I've seen you before because your face seems very familiar.
Me? Me?
Yeah.
Ah,
So I don't know if you've ever been to Powerhouse before, to one of our meetups.
no,
No.
first time. I did used to work right over there for this area at St. Potion. Maybe I've seen you walking up and down there.
No,
Did she leave?
I think she's meeting one of our other colleagues of us in the meeting room over.
Ah.
And she just left her jacket.
Oh. And no comments in the event, so I guess I think
So no influx of hello and salutations from insert random country.
we'll see how many are on the stream.
The city or neighborhood, depending on the city of
So I don't think this analytics thing is working. I don't think the YouTube stuff tells me. At least the connection to YouTube is good. Okay, let's start. Hello and welcome. This will be tools of the trade. So I'll be talking about stuff related to the clients, which tools you would need on your client to kind of work with infrastructure as code. So we'll go through a few stuffs. First, this is an event with Trondheim Azure community, which I started, I think last year or something. But because of the obvious. We didn't have many events before like this year, so I'm doing some events. If you want to join and present, anyone can join. Anyone can be a part of the group. Anyone can kind of talk about what they want to talk about. I welcome anyone that wants to get involved. And I am Tor Ivar Aspelmo. I have been working with Azure for a while, a few years. I've been a consultant for more years, but like in my previous life, I worked with servers and VMs and on-premises stuff like VMware and Citrix and SQL and Exchange and all that ancient legacy stuff that we don't have to do anymore, right? So that's my kind of my past. Did a lot of stuff, had some data center responsibilities. So I have done all the I would say all the things, both hardware and software and physical stuff and yeah, all that. So that's me. Trondheim Azure community is kind of fresh still, so I'm just trying to build it. We have actually crossed 100 members now in the meetup group, and you can see by the turnout that I don't know, 10% could be a good turnout though. We have a code of conduct. This is just something I show each meetup. I like to quote the Cardamom Town law. In Norwegian, it's Cardamom by. They have this Constable Bastian. He makes the rules, and actually he has one rule. You have to be nice and kind. So I'll get back to that one in the next slide. Show respect for people, everything. And an important point is listen to understand how something works, and not necessarily criticize, but criticism is always okay, but just as long as it's constructive. Curious and open to share ideas. So if you're burning in with something that you want to say, just ask, say it. I won't bite off your head or something. We'll just talk here like equals. Be inclusive in comments and questions. That's just kind of generic stuff, right? Include everyone. And the last point is something that I try to say every time I present. Don't be afraid to ask questions. No question is a stupid question. Every question is legitimate, and every question can lead to more learning. So that's the code of conduct. We have more if you check out the webpage. There are a longer code of conduct, but that's kind of summarized. This is the law that Constable Bastian has made for the inhabitants of Cardamom Town. You shall not bother others, you shall be nice and kind. Other than that, you can do as you please. So it's, I think it's a nice law that you can use. So yeah, let's start with a short list, or like a presentation of the stuff that we will be going through today. It's just a short list because having the proper tools is half the job. And you can see that I found a PowerPoint template that I liked, so I'm just using it. I will be going through the code editor. There are two options, and one of them is my preferred. Maybe someone else wants to do another one, that's okay if you want. So I'll go through some of the settings on the code editor. We'll talk about the extensions. We will talk about, themes and some everything that we can and have the time for. After that, I'll talk about the version control software, Git. If you haven't heard about it, we'll talk a little bit about it. Frameworks, we'll go by Terraform and Bicep. And I have really listed the Azure CLI and the Azure PowerShell as kind of frameworks They aren't like infrastructure as code frameworks for real, but you will have to use them and you will have to have them on your computer, like if even just for authentication. We'll get to that also. I will mention containers. It's kind of buzzwordy, so I'll talk about, well, not talk about, I'll mention Minikube and some tools that you can have on your computer, that you can explore containers, explore Kubernetes, explore the stuff that, I don't know, everyone is buzzing about. So you can test it yourself on your computer without deploying anything to Azure, without doing stuff. And then there will be some miscellaneous tools, just screenshots, maybe other stuff. That I will mention in the end. Okay, the code editor. Because when you do infrastructure as code, you need a code editor to edit your infrastructure. And this one is, I think this is one tool that I use the most in my day. I have this open all the time. Use it for PowerShell, I use it for Bicep, Terraform, ARM templates if I have to. Yeah, so I use it for everything and it's great. Of course, it's the Visual Studio Code editor. This is a free open source editor you can download from Microsoft.com or visualstudio.microsoft.com or whatever. You can find the link in the next slide. It has great language support. You can do almost anything. The possibilities are endless because of the extensions and because of the way it's made. It's really extensible. That's because of the extensions. Of course, it's free, open source, and available for everyone. When I say open source, I assume, but I think it's a community edition thing. So at least it's free. It's very easy to use. You can use it for almost anything. And you can quickly get into it when you want to. It's very lightweight. So when you start it, it's not like Visual Studio, because Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code are two different things. And if you have seen the Interstellar movie, that movie is going to cost us 50 years. That's the feeling when you open Visual Studio. But Visual Studio Code is lighter, better, and faster. You open it, it's opened. And then you have some activations going on in the background, like authentication and extensions loading and settings sync and all that. And then you have something called PyCharm. It's a JetBrains product. It is a little more, call it professional. You can buy a professional edition of it, which has more refactoring options. It's mainly a Python development IDE, so it's made for developing Python. There is a free edition, I think there's a community edition. It's lightweight, and it's mostly for Python, that like I mentioned there. But a friend of mine told me that it's actually surprisingly good to use for Terraform. I haven't tested it yet, but it's supposed to be good for Terraform, with nice autocomplete and nice stuff that should be suitable for Terraform. So if you want to try it, could be a nice experience. But I would recommend the free version to start, and then if you like it, you can of course purchase the Pro edition. But I think that you would like it more if you were doing Python development, because that's at least what I hear. Okay, just making sure they can hear me, or them, the one viewer. Okay, so the installation part of Visual Studio Code is actually quite easy. You go to the code.visualstudio.com, and then from there you have the download link. So you download and install. of course, when you download it, it will automatically choose one of the versions available, because you can have this one in a system mode, or it's like a user mode. So if you have a client that you don't actually have administrator on, you can use the user mode to kind of install it in your app data directory. So then it won't require admin rights to install on your computer. I think I have the system mode, but that's just because I can. So I think you will get mostly the same experience if you use the user mode also. So it should be good if you have like a very hardened client that you can't actually use for this stuff. Like maybe you're used to not installing tools because, oh, I need admin and I don't have it. So I don't know how all of your clients are controlled, but maybe do you have like controlled clients from your employer? Yeah, yeah. Then you can use the user mode editor if you don't have it. Oh, the extensions, they are great. So this is my my editor. You can see here in the extensions, let's see, I'll open the extensions tab here, you can see. I have lots of extensions installed, and of course, since I'm streaming, my computer is kind of slow now. So it looks slow, but it's just because of the open broadcasting system using my resources. You can see here, there's some Azure CLI tools. You have Azure Resource Manager template for authoring ARM templates. You have the Bicep, of course. There is a Docker extension that you can edit Docker files and like Docker stuff if you make container images. The Dracula official is my favorite theme at the moment, so that's like a theme I'm using to get the colors and the syntax highlighting. Git graph and yeah, many others also. You can see I have loads of them installed. Of course, the HashiCorp Terraform is an important one, and Markdown lint and the Markdown all-in-one. Those are great for if you author Markdown files. It will tell you, like, okay, you only have one heading 1, and then you have to have subheadings, and the headings shouldn't have the same name and all that. So it's great. You can also have the paste image extension, which you can take a screenshot with any tool. When it's in your clipboard, you can just use some special command to paste it in. Then the image will be created in a folder, and then you will have the link already done in Markdown syntax. So it's great. You can find extensions for all of these things if you want. Remote containers is something I have used. So remote WSL, we'll get into WSL if we have the time later. The VSCode icons, that's just a prettifier. So it will prettify your folder icons in the tree, the folder tree. So lots of great extensions. I would recommend having some of them, maybe not all of them, and the ones you don't need, you can disable, like I have done here. So if you're not using an extension, you can disable it. Then it won't be loaded, it won't use any resources on your computer. So any questions about the extensions? I think it's maybe okay. So the functionality, as you can understand, because of the extensions, is really great. You get loads of functionality that you can choose to have, or you can choose to not have. It will be as heavy or as light as you want. Of course, if you install all of the extensions, you get a slow editor, because every extension uses some time to load. Helper features, I'm not sure what I was thinking about there, but there are helper sources where you can find information. All of the extensions have their own page. So if I go into the extension here, you get a page where you can see the details and when it was changed. You can uninstall it. There are reviews here, and yeah, you'll just find kind of some great guides to guide you through using it. It's really a great editor, and very how should I put it, new user friendly. So I'd say almost anyone could use it. We'll get into the Terraform stuff and Bicep stuff later. Authenticating, you can authenticate to different cloud sources. So I have authenticated to Azure in there to kind of list my Azure functions, to list some resources like storage accounts. You can export things. So if you're authenticated, you can insert resources into your code. I'll show that too if we have the time. And also I have authenticated to GitHub, because with GitHub there is a great feature that I'm not sure everyone is using or familiar with. You can use settings sync. So when I do things on my VSCode, I would very much like it to be like that also other places. And if I connect the VSCode editor to GitHub, I can say synchronize my settings. And then when I authenticate on a different code editor, it will download the same extensions, it will fix the settings file for me, it will do stuff behind the scenes and make it look like I'm used to. So this is a great function that I hope people are using. It really just stores your settings in GitHub, as far as I know. I haven't looked more into it than that. Version control systems. There was like a war before between Git and I guess CVS or something. At least there was a version control system war, like you had Betamax and VHS. But like VHS, Git was the one coming out on top here. Or Blu-ray and HD DVD maybe is a more modern example. So Git would be the Blu-ray equivalent here. That's kind of been the de facto standard for a while now. And a version control system, I covered this in a previous presentation actually. It's available on YouTube if you want to see it, but the Git software or version control system is like, oh, I could talk about this for a long time. You use it to store your changes and kind of have a version history of your files. So you can see when you changed something and what changed. And you also can collaborate on these repositories or the storage containers with others. So you can kind of store things together and work on it together. So it's a great tool. And unfortunately, it's more of a Linux tool. So in Linux, you may find it automatically installed, but in Windows, you won't find it by default. So you'll have to install it. It's called Git for Windows. I have put the install link down there, gitforwindows.org, at least the install guide. You will get the Git available in your CLI, in your command prompts. You will get it available to use. Then with the Git for Windows, you can do like git add and git commit and kind of all of the Git related commands that you would use to version control your software. And when you do infrastructure as code, it's crucial to version control your code. You can't just have it on a computer somewhere and run it willy-nilly. You have to have a tight control on the code and kind of verify it and validate it and all that stuff. you have to log in to the Git also. You log into GitHub. You log in once, and then some kind of credential manager helps you remember your login, so it's not that exciting. You just log in, and then you can forget it. Of course, if you have many different users, you will have to control that somehow. But I only have one user that I use everywhere. So I'm one of these, what they call it, digital hippie, that uses one account for everything. So I have my GitHub account and I use it for stuff. Of course, I can have own customer GitHub accounts if I need it. Can be good sometimes. The functionality will be available everywhere on Windows where you can use command line interface. So in the Windows terminal, in PowerShell, and the CMD prompt, you can use the Git commands. Helper features are available. I would just say Google it. Almost. You have the credential manager is something that you can call a helper feature. But I have kind of installed it and mostly just set it and forget it. It's just there. I don't handle it that much. It just does stuff for me when I need it to. So it's not something you have to control on a regular basis. Update it once in a while, just to keep it up to date. GitHub specific access. Sometimes I write these presentations and I have the greatest idea and I write something and I forget all about it. So yeah, the GitHub specific. You have GitHub desktop, and you have GitHub CLI that you can use if you want to. This is also a tool that will be specific for GitHub. So this Git tool is for all of Git's repository, version control, software stuff. The GitHub is only for GitHub. GitHub is like a specific version of Git that is hosted by a company that is owned by Microsoft. So it's just GitHub. That's one version of Git. Bitbucket is another version of Git that you can use. And also Azure DevOps has some Git in the Azure DevOps repos. So it's all Git.
Question.
Yeah.
So I could actually use Git Windows to connect to Azure DevOps.
Yeah.
And use that to manage my code.
Yeah. You can clone down your Azure DevOps repositories. So the question was if you can use the Git tool to connect to Azure DevOps, and yeah, absolutely. You can clone the Azure DevOps repositories down to your computer and work locally, and then sync the settings up to Azure DevOps. Should work like a charm. I just added this to explain the difference. GitHub repositories, you have like, I would say, you can call it a Git repository. And then when you start working with GitHub, you can call it the GitHub repository. So you have this local Git repository that's just a folder that's Git initialized, and you can start tracking changes. It's not necessarily connected to something yet. You have it locally and you can run it locally. You don't need to push it somewhere. It's still Git on your computer. But it lives on your client, yes. Then you push it or publish it to GitHub, and then when it's published, other people can start working on it. Then it's a remote GitHub repository. So then you can collaborate on the code. This is the way most people use it. You kind of do something locally and then you push it to the cloud, and more people can work together on it. The command line interface. So before it was called the XPlat CLI. They started calling it cross-platform command line interface because it was available on all platforms. You could use it on Linux, you could use it on Macs, you can use it on Windows, you could use it everywhere. So after that, they kind of renamed it to AZ CLI, which is like the Azure command line interface. This is a tool that you can use. I can show you here if my stream will allow it. Okay, this will take some time to load now, I see. Come on. Load already.
Maybe normal PowerShell will be quicker.
Yeah, maybe. This was slow. No, there it is. 14 seconds to load. That's not good. Okay, anyway. AZ. Actually, just type AZ and it will start, I think. So the Azure CLI, it's like its own Azure command line interface to do stuff to Azure. They still call it the cool new Azure CLI, even though it has been around for a while. I mostly just use it now for authentication. So AZ login to log in my service principals or my user accounts. When I press enter, it will send me to my mostly recently used browser, and I will there be able to authenticate with multi-factor authentication, all that stuff. And then I will be authenticated in this terminal on the client. After I've done that, I can start using Terraform and PowerShell. No, PowerShell is its own authentication, we'll get to that. But after that, I can use other stuff that kind of depends on the AZ CLI authentication. Also, everything you can do with Terraform or with PowerShell, you can do in the CLI. So you can create resource groups, you can create virtual machines, you can create everything from there. You can delete everything from there. It's a powerful tool. And after you install it, it's quite easy to upgrade and use. So should be, I think it's AZ upgrade, yeah, AZ upgrade, and then you get upgraded. You can use find, and then with AZ find you can kind of search for stuff. Sorry, I can't find anything. Please let us know how we are doing. Okay. Find AZ group. So this should be using some form of, yeah, you can see, should be using some form of machine learning or something. Should be trained to kind of give you examples based on the string that you put into it. So you should be able to find stuff there. It's a nice tool to help you, and then you can use AZ group help, I think. Help me, please. Yeah. It should at least show you, yeah, it shows you the usage. So you can do this for all of the resource types. You can use the AZ and then the command and then -- help, and it will show you usage examples. It will show you which commands you can use. It's really great. Okay, I'll close this down. So we've been through the login, the functionality, helper features, and then, yeah, authenticating Terraform. You can read about this in the authenticating section of the Terraform docs. There you can see that you use the IaC CLI, and that's the supported form of authentication to use with Terraform deployments. So when you authenticate with the IaC CLI, you can do Terraform stuff as the user that is signed in with the IaC CLI. You don't have to do anything else in the Terraform code or to be authenticated. So it's a great way to do it on your client, to just test things out. And then when you get more advanced, of course, you would use like a service principal and more complex ways of logging in. A service principal is like a service account in Azure that you can use to do stuff, create stuff.
So with regards to Terraform, do we simply run a finished TF file, or that we do on the side, or is there any further Terraform manipulation that is specific to Azure CLI?
No, you just use this Azure CLI to authenticate, and then after that the Terraform is kind of its own executable that it runs outside of Azure CLI. So Terraform is like a different beast. I'll see if I get to it afterwards. Azure PowerShell, PowerShell Core. If you haven't heard about it, that's the new PowerShell. I think from the 6.0, it has been based on .NET Core instead of .NET Framework, and now it's cross-platform also, so you can use it on Linux and Macintosh and Windows, of course. You install it from Microsoft. I see that is the... Okay, I have mixed the pages here. That's no biggie. I'll fix it before I give you the slides. So the PowerShell core is easily installed from Microsoft. It's MSI file you install. The latest version right now is 7.2.6, I think. I think that's the one I have. And every time you open PowerShell, you will get notified if you have an old version. So if you open the PowerShell core and then you have 7.2.4, which I had like a week ago, you're using an outdated version of PowerShell. Please click here to download the upgrade. Then you'll be sent to the download place and you can download the MSI. It's great stuff. Functionality-wise, PowerShell core is mostly the same as PowerShell. What was previously called PowerShell is now PowerShell 5.1, and then PowerShell core is the 7.2.6. And these versions can live side by side on your computer. You can have the 5.1, which is based on .NET Framework, and then you can have the 7.2.6 that is based on .NET Core. They work independently. So if you're authenticated to Azure if you're authenticated to Azure in the PowerShell core, I don't think you'll be authenticated in the PowerShell. You would have to authenticate both places, I think.
And when it comes to Azure CLI, do we also have, I guess we also have to install it independently as well?
Yeah. The Azure CLI is also independent from PowerShell. The YouTube says no data. I am streaming.
The stream is fine.
Okay. It's good though. I will give you all of the slides and all that stuff when it's done. So when you have the PowerShell, you can use the Azure PowerShell module, which is a module to download with PowerShell Get, you call it. This is just like an install module way. You just run a command and then it will install the Azure PowerShell module for you. The Azure PowerShell module includes the frameworks or the commandlets you need to authenticate and to create virtual machines, to create storage accounts. So everything you can do with the IaC CLI, you can also do with Azure PowerShell. So if you use the PowerShell and if you know PowerShell, you can use the Azure PowerShell to manage Azure. It's a fine way to manage Azure. It's powerful, it's dynamic, you can script all you want, create hundreds of VMs with a PowerShell script if you want. It's no problem. So if PowerShell is your weapon of choice, you can use the Azure PowerShell to manage Azure, no problem. Though it imperative way of doing it, so you would have to explicitly write how everything is supposed to be done and in the correct order in the script. So that's why it's hard and more complex than Terraform or Bicep, but it's possible. So if a hardcore PowerShell drifter coming from the operations and you have all of the PowerShell skills, Azure PowerShell would be a great starting point to kind of start messing around with Azure. Yeah, helper features and login stuff is the same as PowerShell. You use the, let's see, PowerShell. No, the regular PowerShell wasn't any faster. So yeah, 5 seconds faster, okay. Log in, AZ account. So this command will do the same thing that AZ login will do. It will send you to the browser and then you will authenticate with multi-factor and all that. So this one will give you a connection to Azure, and then you would have to set the correct subscription and all that stuff. I don't think we need any more info than that on Azure PowerShell module. It's a great way to manage Azure. Remember the context always. The context in Azure CLI is you can get it with AZ account show or AZ account clear with clear your context. So the context is whoever you are connected to. If you have many customers, you need to be careful that you're connected to the correct customer when you do stuff. Like AZ group destroy. Of course, if the group doesn't exist, you would get an error message. But if it exists, you would get maybe a warning. And then you would say, yes, of course, I want to delete it. And then when the resource group is gone, the resources are gone. So yeah, remember the context. In Azure PowerShell, you have the get AZ context and the clear AZ context. So the get AZ context and set AZ context is the ones used for connecting to your Azure subscription, if you get that far. Windows Terminal is the one I was using right now, the one that took a while to start. Let's see if I can't show you again. So the Windows Terminal is the new way of using a terminal in Windows. You can see here that I have some prompts or some script prompts here. I have the command prompt, which is the regular command prompt. I have the Azure Cloud Shell that is kind of directly integrated into the Windows Terminal, so I can authenticate there and run Azure Cloud Shell. I have an old PowerShell running that I can use, and then the one called Ubuntu is Windows Subsystem for Linux that I use for some, I don't know, Linux stuff when I need it. And then also there's many other possibilities. If you have an executable, you can put it in there and start it. So you can start, if you have like a bash, you can use it there. You can use the git bash command prompt there if you want to. It's a great way of running terminals, and it's very, very dynamic. And the settings open in here have just grown. So before it was a settings JSON file you had to edit manually to get settings correct, and then you would have to remember to save it, and you'd have some syntax error and stuff. But this one, it's really great now. You get possibilities to set your, which is your default profile, interaction, how you can click things. You can set the appearance and the color schemes, which you can decide, or you can download color schemes from the internet where you just say, okay, I want the one that guy has. Sometimes they will tell you. You can just get their settings file, because there is a settings file behind there also that you can export and use. And then you create profiles, and you can determine with the profiles where should they start. If you open PowerShell, which folder do you want to start the PowerShell in? So I have set my Git repos folder, but you can choose whatever you want, no problem. Yeah, so you can see open JSON file. This is the JSON file that we had to edit manually before. Yeah, so you can see there are some color schemes here that I have probably downloaded and kind of stolen from someone. I didn't want to create it for myself. So that's the Windows terminal. Microsoft Store is the recommended way to install it, because then you will always be updated. I have used it since preview, so actually I'm not sure which version I'm running, because I used the preview and the preview was manual, and then I installed something from an MSI, and then this one maybe is manual, and Microsoft Store isn't available on my computer because of corporate policy, so I can't. So it's manually installed. Yeah, Terraform. The Terraform is actually a standalone executable that you download to your computer, so you won't have it by default. You have to download it and put it somewhere. So I downloaded it and put it into my program files, 64 or something. Yeah, no, it's program files folder. Not the program files x86, but the regular program files, the 64-bit folder. Made a Terraform folder there, which I put in my path, so I can use it from everywhere, and then it's just there. The upgrade on Windows, it is manual. So you would have to download the new version of PowerShell, but you will get notified when you need to. So every time you run Terraform locally, you will get notified if you're running an outdated version. Mostly you will run Terraform from a workflow or pipeline somewhere. So I haven't run Terraform locally since I don't know when. I have it in the Windows Subsystem for Linux, but there I just use apt to update it. So it's just sudo apt upgrade update. It's great. Windows, not so much.
They do have one chocolatey, but I don't know if they made it for Winget.
I'm not sure yet. I have tested Winget, but the times I have used Winget, it has been hit and miss. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it installs something that doesn't work. So for Python, I tried to install Python with Winget, then I got the wrong version. But Winget is a great new tool to use for stuff like that. You will get it by default. So I haven't included it. It's like a, I don't know, PowerShell thing or a command line thing or something. I don't know, maybe you know something more about it.
I think it's, as you said, with MS Store or something got toggled.
Yeah, I think so also. So the Winget is like chocolatey, yeah. I have chosen not to use chocolatey for some reason, but there was a reason there sometime. I just don't remember it.
Horrible to remove it afterwards.
Yeah, maybe. So the installation upgrade, you download it manually from the Terraform HashiCorp page, and then you kind of run it from your path. Should be okay. Login is done with Azure CLI locally on your client. That's the preferred way of doing it on your client. When you're doing it in a pipeline or in workflow in GitHub, you would do it with a service principal and some behind-the-scenes code secrets. Never clear text secrets, but kind of behind the scenes. Helper features are, everything you can find on Terraform, the HashiCorp. You can find documentation on the providers. You can find everything you need there in the Terraform docs. They are great. They are searchable, and they are nice to use. Terraform autocomplete. I will do a short demo on the autocompleting Terraform because, okay. So let's see here if I can show you. whenever I want a new resource, if I'm using Terraform, I'll do resource, type resource, and then a pop-up will say, oh, you want to create a resource, let me help you. I'll tab, and then I can write Azure RM. Let's see, the application gateway is a great way of showing the settings that needs to be populated. So this will show you like a bare bones example of what you might need when you create an application gateway in Azure. Then you will get this automatically entered for you, and then you will have to, of course, enter variables or enter stuff into the strings to get it to work. And then me knowing application gateway as I do, this will fail, and then you have to rerun it, and then it will fail again, and then you rerun it, and then it will fail again. So the application gateway is a different beast that you have to kind of know and try to deploy before you make it, I'd say. But if we go to a different resource, resource group, you just need a name and a location, and that's it. When you type that and you run Terraform plan, it will say, okay, we need to create this resource group. Terraform apply, resource group created. Then you have a resource group in Azure. So it's actually that simple, and that's hard, you might say. But most of the time you might have something copied from earlier that you want to use. Maybe you would use some code from a blog somewhere or something. You just paste it in there, and then you can see.
So you use Terraform to set up Azure resources in a declarative way,
Yep.
compared to using CLI where you have imperative instruction by instruction?
Yeah, I prefer the declarative way because for me it doesn't really matter which how you put it, the dependencies and all that. I don't want to handle that in my mind. I used to do that with PowerShell, so I used to have to know that, okay, the network interface card has to come first, and then the hard disk, and then the availability set, and then I can do the virtual machine. And if you try it the other way, it will fail miserably. So I like to just send something declarative to the Azure API, and then let Microsoft handle the backend dependencies. Both Bicep and ARM and Terraform will do that for you, or Pulumi, or whatever other tools you want to use.
Okay.
So I prefer the declarative way of doing it, because I don't want to have to handle the dependencies on my own.
Exactly.
Also, that is the preferred way from Microsoft, I think, to use. Just send it to the API and don't do your own dependency tracking. What am I looking for here?
Is there also some support for pre-fills, kind of like the locations, that it has a list of known regions in Azure, like East US 1, 2, 3, or is it something that is expected of us to know by heart?
No, the Bicep will do that for you. So in Terraform, I don't think you have autocomplete for the fields, but in Bicep I know you have the autocomplete fields, because Microsoft controls it, and Microsoft can put the schemas behind and point to the correct places where we'll find the information. But Terraform is like a different company, different tool, so they don't have it. But what I wanted to show you was this one, pre-fill required fields. That's the one that gives you the pre-fill of the required fields. And also format on save. It's a great tool, so every time you save a Terraform file, it will automatically format it for you. So you can write whatever code you want, and whatever syntax you want, with whatever indentation you want, and then you're in Terraform format, and then it will format it for you. So that's a great functionality. I would recommend using it.
Are there semantic white space in Terraform, like in Python, where a space can completely mess you up?
It's mostly for visibility or for readability. So you can do it in many ways. But of course, one way is preferred. I prefer one way, and maybe others prefer other ways. So Bicep is the weapon of choice for Azure if you're just using Azure. It's a declarative way of writing infrastructure, and it's built overbuilt domain-specific language for ARM templates. So it's really just ARM templates with some shiny new abstraction.
But Terraform is not specific to Azure, right? That kind of multiple cloud.
No, Terraform is multi-cloud.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So you have to write different code, of course. You have to use different providers, but it's the same tool. So you will write the same syntax and the same files. You just have to write differently for Google Cloud than you do for Azure. So you can't write one code and then everything will run it in all clouds. That would be a very complex piece of code, and it would be a very hard to generalize enough that you can use it everywhere. Yeah, with Bicep, you have the IaC CLI has a built-in Bicep that you get automatically. But also Bicep is a freestanding executable that you download and use on your computer. So you have to download it from the, yeah, that's the Terraform. I will fix that also when I send you the slides. But you download it from Microsoft and put it somewhere. It has lots of helper features in the VSCode, and also the Azure CLI has its own version of Bicep that you have on your computer. So if you have Azure CLI, you automatically get the Azure CLI Bicep version that will run when you do Azure CLI Bicep stuff, because you can do Bicep stuff on your computer like directly with the Bicep command. Then you have to download the native the Bicep program and have it on your computer. But you can also do IaC CLI Bicep and use the built-in Bicep in Azure CLI, if that makes sense. And this one you can upgrade with Azure CLI. So I can show you. I will show you the in here version. So you can see here I have the 0.7.4 version there, and if I do Bicep version, let's see which version I have there. I have the 0.5.6 there. So the IaC Bicep is a different version than my Bicep that I'm using outside IaC CLI. This is because these are two independent Bicep files or Bicep implementations on my computer. So the IaC CLI I can upgrade automatically from IaC CLI, but the other Bicep I need to manually update. Let's see, Bicep insert resource, yes. Demo Bicep. This one also has a built-in way of pre-filling your fields, but here you can get, I think you can get the location help. No, doesn't look like it. But in here you should be able to get some help though. Yeah, here you get the pre-filled versions and all that. So here you can just generate 2, and then you can fill in everything down here. You can see that there are lots of stuff that needs to be done with an application gateway before you can use it. I want to show you the insert resource. If you have the Bicep extension, you'll need this to get the pre-fills. You can do Control Shift and P inside the Visual Studio Code, and then you can get the command palette. And from here you can do lots of stuff, but Bicep insert resource is one of them. I will insert it into this file, yes. And then I entered the resource ID for a resource that I already had created with ClickOps in the portal, for instance. And then I get the resource ID from the portal. I enter it here, and then it will magically enter the resource here with pre-filled values. You see West Europe, because this one is deployed in West Europe already. And this is just like a reverse engineer of the portal. So it will download your resource as like an ARM template, and then it will convert that ARM template to a Bicep, like behind the scenes, and enter the Bicep into your file. So this is a great way of, if you have ClickOps, you can reverse engineer it in this way. It's really nice. For Terraform, you have Azure Terraform, which can import resources from Azure. So you can point it to a resource, and it will reverse engineer that resource into a Terraform file for you, and also enter it into state and everything. It's really great. Yeah, so that's the Bicep.
Sorry, can I ask what's the motivation for going from ARM templates to Bicep?
Oh, that's a long discussion. The motivation for going from ARM to Bicep templates was the question. ARM templates are hard and difficult to author, and difficult on the eyes, and I don't know, just not readable for humans. That's why Microsoft decided to do a new templating language called Bicep, which is a domain-specific language built on ARM. So it's really just like a transpiler, which will transpile a Bicep template, which looks more like, I don't know, YAML, or looks like more human readable. It will transpile this into ARM template and then send the ARM template to the ARM API, just like before. But you can send the Bicep file directly to the ARM API also. So you can do AZ deploy Bicep file, for instance. And then behind the scenes, there will be done a conversion for you. But the main motivation was just adoption, I think, and making people use the declarative languages, making people start templating and start doing the infrastructure as code, because ARM, I've used it for years, so I understand it. And I used to say I speak ARM templates fluently, but it's not a good experience to author. If you are coming in now and want to do Azure infrastructure as code, by all means do Bicep. You don't need to know ARM.
Is there some things that still can be done in Bicep that require ARM? E.g. something with AAD or...
No, actually Bicep will soon have more than ARM. So you get the Kubernetes extensibility. You will get the possibility of doing Azure AD stuff with Bicep. And yeah, Bicep is like the way to go going forward. If you know ARM, great. But if you want to work with infrastructure as code in Azure in the future, and also now, Bicep is the way to go, actually. Also, if you want to do native stuff in Azure, Bicep is the one where you get supported previews first, and yeah, place where you get the information. So I think ARM will be there for a while. It won't disappear for long, but Bicep is the new golden child of infrastructure as code at Microsoft. I am sure of it. Yeah, so the Windows subsystem for Linux, I can show you this also. This is a for real Linux kernel, because this is the version 2, the WSL 2. So this is just Linux running on Windows. It's like a VM running behind the scenes, and you get the full Linux kernel. You can do the sudo update. And this will, yeah, it does nothing on your computer. So it does nothing with your Windows installation. It does nothing with your file system unless you go to the explicitly mounted file system in the WSL2, the subsystem for Linux. Then you don't change something in your Windows. So you have a freestanding file system, Linux file system for real that you can use. It's way quicker than using the mounted file system paths because this is kind of translated behind the scenes from Linux to Windows, and yeah, you know. So the native file system in Linux is the way to go there. If you want to use Git, it's also really fast there. Also, if we had the time, we could I could show you working with code directly in the Visual Studio Code Editor, working directly into this. So from here I can do Bicep, yeah, playground, okay. And then I code dot, and then it will start a Visual Studio Code instance from this folder in my Linux file system, and you can edit it in a Visual Studio Code GUI on your Windows. So it will be running in the Linux, but you will do the code editing in the Windows GUI. You don't need to use Vim or Nano or those text-based. Okay, you can use them if you want to. If you prefer Vim, that's your choice. Whatever floats your boat. I can never exit Vim. Okay, this was really slow.
Well, that's why the MacBook Touch Bar was very popular, because you would get in the top left corner inside Vim to simply on Touch Bar exit Vim.
Yeah.
You can even attach the debugger, can't you?
I don't know. I think so. I haven't really explored this as much as I would want to, but yeah.
Yeah, the cool thing is they separated the client and the backend, so you can have your backend VSCode running in VSL and the client simply.
Oh yeah, you can do so much powerful stuff if you go to, let's open a browser and go to github.com/, let's do the public, and if you go into the repository, you can, so this is just a bonus, just go in here, and then if you're in the repository, press the dot, and then the VS Code editor in your browser will just open, and then you can use, so this is based on what you were talking about, the VS Code client and the VS Code server being separated. Then you can run the VS Code in your client, and I know Rutger is running this himself with editing code on your home server, right?
Yep, all my repositories live on a Linux box at home, and I open my, I always, yeah, I have a VPN set up, and if I want to use VS Code, I type the URL in my address bar.
Yeah, so here, everything you do will be instantly committed, and then you can commit this git command that kind of enters your code into the Git versioning system. And then when you do, you don't have to push it to GitHub because it's already pushed when you're there. So it's a great way to code actually. If you are on a new client, you don't have VS Code installed yet, use the browser version. It's okay. You don't get all the same extensions by default, but yeah, should be a good experience even though.
It's even GitHub agnostic, so basically if you start with, I don't know, HTTP code.dev and then / any repository, it will open it in the web version.
Yeah, it's nice, very nice. They make it so simple for us now. Of course, you can debate if it's simple or not, but the more options you have, then maybe the harder it is to choose an option. I don't know. But yeah, so this one now is running on my VSL. I can edit files here, and I can save them to the Linux file system. But of course, this one will be different from my Windows file system, so I'd have to hold tunga rett I munnen. when I do this. Keep the tongue in the right mouth. So that's great. Yeah, other tools and honorable mentions. If you have been using draw.io, it's a great way to use charts. I also think there's something called Lucid Chart that you can use to kind of draw your diagrams, visual stencils in the browser. And then you can save your diagrams anywhere with the diagram.net. They recently renamed, or not recently, but they renamed the draw.io because it was draw.io before. It is now renamed to app.diagram.net. So you can use this and make diagrams. It's free to use. You can store the diagrams on your client. You can store it in GitHub, Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive. You can store it anywhere, work with them, edit them. It's free. You get the built-in Azure icons. Not the same great icons that you can get in Visio, but they are okay for diagrams. It's very easy to use. I had to do an architecture for a project and my Visio was not available because I hadn't used it for a couple of months, and then the license is revoked. So I had to use draw.io to make a diagram, and I hadn't used it, so I had to learn it, and it was just a couple hours, and I had a working diagram that I could show to a customer.
I use diagram.net over Visio, even though I have a license.
Yeah, it's great. I use it when I can. So I would say maybe it's easier to use, and it's easier to do the connection points. It's easier to make nice diagrams because so much is done for you, and it's always the newest version. You don't have to handle the local stencils, the local icon sets. You don't have to do all that. And also there are more connection points on the icons there than you can find in Visio, because in Visio you will require that the ones making the icons put the connection points there. And in diagram.net you get this kind of free of charge. It's just there. Okay, I think this is one of the last slides. Other useful tools. Greenshot is my go-to screenshotting tool. I don't use the built-in Windows snippet tool because I find that I want something more. And this screenshot tool, it opens a dialog box for you, opens a window with screenshots where you can actually draw on your screenshot. So you can put nice arrows or red boxes or text, whatever you want, directly on the screenshot, and then copy it to clipboard or save it as an image somewhere. You can also do loads of auto-save stuff. I have a huge library of screenshots because everyone is stored each time with a new name. So I have lots of images in my pictures folder. It's great. The Azure Storage Explorer, maybe it's a bit outdated, but you can explore storage accounts in Azure. You can explore, I think, Cosmos DB. You can explore loads of storage resources through the Azure Storage Explorer locally on your client. This is not something you can do with the Windows Explorer. You would have to use a special tool for this, and the Azure Storage Explorer is something you can use for it. Actually, I think they have renamed it. Typically Microsoft, I think it's called Azure Data Studio or something now.
Data Studio is kind of like the SSMS replacement.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think you can connect to storage accounts also in that one. I think. But that's just, I don't use it that much. I just used it before to do some stuff. The Minikube I mentioned, you can run a local one node cluster on your client if you want to test Kubernetes. It's like a mini Kubernetes cluster that you can have locally on your computer. It's great to test and experiment without paying for infrastructure somewhere. Of course, you need to have the resources on your computer to actually run it right or correctly or with enough resources. Docker Desktop is a great tool to use Docker on your client. Of course, if you have been using Docker Desktop, you would know about the license change that happened a while ago that makes it not allowed to use on computers enrolled in business more than so-and-so users. So I'm not allowed to have it on my Super Stereo computer anymore because it's a breach of licensing. So you have to be careful with that. I guess a Microsoft client would also have this problem. So unless Microsoft then would pay for a license to use it, then for X amount of users, it's a no-go. Before it was community, I don't know, open source, free to use, but then they changed it. I guess they wanted to make some money or something, I don't know. So I could use it on my laptop, but I chose to uninstall it because I like to do things the right way. But not everyone has to do that. K9S, or K9s, or whatever you pronounce it, it's like a text-based administrative tool for Kubernetes that you can use on Subsystem for Linux or your Linux. You will get a nice display where you can kind of very easily check your Kubernetes and your clusters and stuff. Visual stencils and diagrams you can download. GitHub Desktop is a tool you can use to navigate and clone GitHub repositories and clone and do pull requests and pull request merges and all of that with a nice simple GUI. GitHub CLI is command line interface for GitHub, so you can do secrets creation, you can do repositories creation, you can do pull request merges, you can do all that advanced stuff with a simple command. Slack, I use Slack at customers to chat with their employees or to chat. I use it to chat with people I know. So I like Slack. For me, it might be it is better than Teams, I think. Not to start a war here, but it's easier to use and it's kind of more lightweight, I would say. Yeah. It's more free, so I can have workspaces here and workspaces there that I can speak in. So I think it's great. Oh my posh, if you saw my command line prompt, oh my posh is what I used to kind of pimp it. It's great to get like the Git branch that you're working on in the command prompt, so you can also always see, okay, am I on the main branch or am I on the feature branch? Because if you're working with Git, you need to know which branch you're working on so that you know when can I commit, when can I push, and all that stuff. And the PowerShell AZ predictor is great too. It kind of, based on your history, it will try to predict which command you try to run, and it will download a list of these and show you commands that it thinks that you want to use. So it's great. I just added this for fun. Microsoft Learn is a great place to start learning Azure stuff. You get module-based learning paths, so you can say that you're an Azure administrator to start using Azure stuff. You get sandboxes somewhere also. In some of the modules you can get free Azure credits to deploy stuff, to test stuff. So this is great. It's a really great learning experience, and also you can connect them to certifications, and you have a profile there. It's like gamification of learning because you earn experience points when you complete modules. So I think I'm level something, I don't know. I haven't really kept track of it, but it's fun if you start earning the experience points and thinking about it like a role-playing game or something. So it's great fun. Udemy I have used for some, I've bought some movies there, movies, you can call it courses, lessons, whatever. Mostly you need to check the trainers first, because not everyone is the same quality, but I found someone I liked and then bought some videos from them. Always go into Udemy with incognito mode, and then you will get this 5 hours sale, right? So they don't know you're a returning customer, and then they will give you a discount. I think you'll get, yeah, the courses will cost some $12 and stuff like that. It's always down from $300 or $3,000, right? It's always special price for you, my friend. And then YouTube is also great. It's free, and I would strongly recommend John Saville. He has great videos. Try not to be disturbed by the shiny head and the large biceps, because yeah, he's a great guy. And he does great training videos, great fundamentals and great explanations, and he always whiteboards with a whiteboard behind him and draws and all that. So it's great fun to watch, and very nice to learn. And also, yeah, the other ones mentioned there. Lots of great free content there. So that was my presentation. Any questions or discussion points or anything that I missed?
I could mention, it was one of you two asked if Terraform was multi-cloud. I'd like to mention that someone wrote a provider so that you can order pizza with Terraform from Domino's, actually.
Yeah.
So that's how multi-cloud Terraform is. Yeah.
You can also manage your Spotify playlists with Terraform if you want. I did this in a presentation once. Of course, it failed miserably, the demo ghost and all that, but you can create playlists, delete playlists, so your entire playlist collection could be managed by Terraform. That's great fun.
It's typically something you run in continuous deployment pipelines, Terraform?
You can do that, yes. But I did it just like an example on my client.
Locally.
Yeah. You can find me at Twitter, Torivara, or I coined the Azure Trondheim username, so you can find us there. Azure Trondheim has 1 follower, it's me. And then you can just send me an email or contact me on LinkedIn or just wherever, it doesn't matter actually. And I'll make time for you, I guess. So that's my presentation. Hope it was useful. Thank you. I will.
You don't have any tweets on Azure Trondheim?
No. I will stop the stream now.
That's why we don't have any.
Bye everyone.